What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers prepare for the Baltimore Ravens, but there are plenty of headlines to talk about, including a couple of not so great injuries for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A little back and forth between Patrick Queen and a Washington Commanders tight end. Mike Williams shocked the world, introduced himself to everybody in Pittsburgh on Sunday with a game-winning touchdown, and then reminded a certain someone that he is still pretty good at football. The Pittsburgh Steelers add an all-pro kick returner to their practice squad, and it's Tuesday, so we're diving in to overreactions. It's a good fall day here in the city of Pittsburgh. It's chilly. I bought a new jacket yesterday. It just feels like, we're here. We're officially, we've made it over the hump, and there's no turning back now. Some may be excited for that. Some may be dreading that. I will say I'm walking the line, my friend. How are you feeling? And hope you're having a good day.
In the wise words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. There could always be another 70-degree day because yesterday it was 70 degrees. So I'm not going full winter jacket yet, but I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. It's nice that it's finally an AFC North week. It's nice that it's finally a Ravens week. Feels like we were never going to get to this point, and now, well, that's going to be the new normal. So 6 AFC North games in the final 8 games of the season. It's going to be a stretch, my friend. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it is going to be a stretch, and it's going to be a good stretch. It's a good stretch of good football, which is exciting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'll tell you this, over the next 4 weeks, we will say the words, well, it's an AFC North game, and anything could happen, probably more than we will say anything else. And while that is true, you win those AFC North games, you put yourself in position to go as far as you may want to go in 2024, and it starts with a red-hot Baltimore Ravens, who people will look at the Cincinnati game, and we'll start it off here. This will be the first time we say it. You win by 1, anything could happen in the AFC North. Anything could happen in the AFC North. You go back a week before that, they win 41-10 over a team that just came a blocked field goal away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs. So don't overestimate or underestimate the Baltimore Ravens, but we'll dive into the rest of it. We got plenty of news and notes on top of that include an all-pro signing that was a bit shocking to me, but comes with more upside for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll toss it to you. What do we got?
Yeah, let's start off with an injury roundup because Mike Tomlin had his weekly Tuesday press conference and kicked things off with a very long list of injuries. Let's start with the one that we know for certain. Alex Highsmith is ruled out due to his ankle injury. Reports are indicating 2 to 3 weeks for Highsmith, but he will not be available this Sunday for the Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it's definitely a loss, but I'll tell you this, the way that injury looked, and we talked about it yesterday, they tell you that if the ankle goes back, it's a good thing. If it stays there, it's a bad thing. So you kind of knew that there was some positivity for Alex Highsmith. His dad tweeted out 2 to 3 weeks. He'll be back to go. Low ankle sprain. It could be much worse for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Alex Highsmith has been on a tear this season when he's healthy. The problem is he hasn't really been healthy, and the Pittsburgh Steelers need some consistency there. I mean, Mike Tomlin said it himself. This is another cool reason. Maybe it wasn't that cool, but Mike Tomlin wanted to say it was cool that they went out and they added Preston Smith. I imagine, Preston Smith gets the start against the Baltimore Ravens. Nick Herbig comes off the bench for Pittsburgh. It's a massive loss. It's a good opportunity to see, well, did this work out? Did these championship moves that we keep talking about come to fruition for the Pittsburgh Steelers? We'll see. We'll see on Sunday. Not a great injury, but I think the Steelers walked away pretty relieved about that one.
Yeah, out of the other injury updates, Nick Herbig, as you mentioned there, expected to come back. Mike Tomlin saying he was essentially on the goal line of coming back, but just wasn't good enough to get into the lineup against the Washington Commanders, so he's expected to return. And then there was a handful of players that Tomlin put under the category of, quote, not anticipating a lack of availability, basically to say, we expect them to play, but we'll have to see what happens as the week progresses. That includes Corey Trice, Diontae Jackson, Najee Harris, and later he included Calvin Austin into that.
Yeah, you look at that group. Calvin Austin, I'm glad, walked away without a concussion. That's pretty good. Najee's the big one. That's the, undergoing further testing. We all know Najee Harris is superhuman, but, superhuman's awesome. Everybody's still human at the same time. Things happen. I would say I expect both of those guys to go. This has been almost constant for Diontae Jackson this season. He just kind of gets banged up, leaves a football game, then comes back the next week, which, I mean, if that's as bad as it's going to get, okay, fine. You're still playing most of these football games. Najee, on the other hand, you need Najee out there. You need a guy like that, old, reliable out there, especially against the Baltimore Ravens. I would imagine the week turns out like this. Diontae Jackson does not practice tomorrow. He practices in a limited capacity on Thursday. He's good to go on Friday. I don't think Najee Harris is going to practice at all. I think he will walk in on Sunday and be healthy and ready to go, but I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers will put him on the field, much like when he dealt with knee injuries last year. They just said, well, why is he practice? There's no reason for Najee Harris to practice. There's no reason to hurt him or to push that injury any further. Najee's the concerning one here, but I don't think the injury report will tell the story. I think it will make it look worse than it actually is. I don't hold my breath this week, or I won't hold my breath this week thinking Najee Harris isn't going to play. And I bet you if you ask Najee Harris, he's going to play against the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, the last name that was thrown in there was Calvin Austin, and that might be the reason that we saw another move made for the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier today. They added an former All-Pro wide receiver / kick returner, Jamal Agnew, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. Agnew, a former 5th-round pick of the Detroit Lions, was a 2017 first-team All-Pro as a rookie. What do you think about the Steelers' addition of Jamal Agnew?
Yeah, I mean, it's still an All-Pro. You added an All-Pro wide receiver / punt returner, and that's a move that everybody wanted to make. He's healthy now. He dealt with the shoulder and a rib injury, I think, in week 10 last season that held him out the rest of the season. He's good to go. I think he had a number of teams looking at him. He felt the Pittsburgh Steelers were the right ones. This is a move that comes, I believe, on the back end of Calvin Austin. You get that injury news, you see that happen, you start to worry, okay, what if something happened? Where do you turn to next? Is Scotty Miller the guy? Maybe, but maybe Jamal Agnew is the replacement for Scotty Miller because he brings more upside on special teams, and you could kind of rely on him in more serious ways than you would a Scotty Miller. I think either way, it's a good move for the practice squad. It's a good move for week 11 of the NFL season. It's a good move for a guy that just got healthy and awesome, but there's a 50% chance that this guy never sees the field. There's a 50% chance that somehow he becomes a crucial part to the Pittsburgh Steelers because of some big-time injury that they now have to overcome on special teams or in the wide receiver core, wherever. I mean, we'll see. It's been a long time since he has been an All-Pro, but he was a Pro Bowler in 2022. His numbers weren't super impressive. I don't know what super impressive punt return make a Pro Bowl numbers are, because you look at it, he had like 250 punt return yards. Calvin Austin did half of that in a game, and okay, great. Maybe it was just a bad punt return year. Who knows? I still think it's a move that benefits the Pittsburgh Steelers, costs them literally nothing, and add somebody. It's just like CJ Henderson. Add somebody to their practice squad that maybe does something for them in the future and holds a little bit more weight than the random guy that would never play in a million years that was there yesterday.
Yeah, and I think it also protects a little bit of the running back room, because you look at who's returning kicks for you right now. It's Jaylen Warren and Cordero Patterson, with Najee Harris now dealing with an injury. Again, an injury that we expect him to play with. Like, we expect it not to bother him throughout the season. You're going into a back half of the season that's going to be a murderer's row. If you need to get a little bit less work for one of your running backs, you can put Jamal Agnew back. You can elevate him because he's on the practice squad, elevate him, then put him back on kick return if need be. It's another one of those moves that we talked about last week with Omar Khan, where it's, let's make sure that we're backfilling these positions so we have an in case of emergency in a lot of different areas of the roster.
Yeah, I agree. And they tested him out a couple of weeks ago. They obviously felt good enough to say, okay, we need somebody now. Let's go at him before he gets signed elsewhere. And I think that was a move. Once again, it's just, it's another Terrell Edmonds. It's another Cam Sutton. It's another Cordero Patterson. It's another CJ Henderson. Just why not? At the end of the day, why not? So it's a good move. In my opinion, a move that only makes the Steelers better.
Let's move over from injuries and signings to a little bit of drama because we got 2 cases of it going into today. And let's start with the one that happened this past weekend during the matchup between the Commanders and the Steelers. Tight end John Bates got into it with linebacker Patrick Queen, a scuffle that ended up resulting in offsetting penalties, but there's a little bit more to it, according to John Bates, saying, quote, "I would say something like that has never really happened to me. Like I said, I was playing through the whistle. It's just the way that I play. If you go back and watch the film, in my opinion, it was probably him trying to do something dirty to me. Things happen. It is what it is." So John Bates calling the play on Sunday dirty on Patrick Queen's part should make for an interesting rebuttal from Patrick Queen, who never backs down from anything.
No. And he went on Twitter, I want to say noon today, something like that, and said, you know where to find me. I'm easy to find if it needs to be. And I'll say this, you watch the play, it's just 2 guys scruffing it out. That's all it is. It's 2 guys going past the whistle and then realize that the play was over and the other guy's not letting go, and it's just getting more aggravation right there. You're just, okay, cool. You're going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Why would I stop? I'm not going to back down. You're here for me. It looked like John Bates spit for a minute, and I thought he spit at a player. At that point, I was like, ooh, okay, this is getting pretty gnarly. Maybe it was the mohawk, or not the mohawk, the mullet. Maybe it was the mullet that just kind of gave you could possibly spit in Patrick Queen's face vibes. But I thought it was clean dirty. If we're gonna go put the blame on anybody, I don't think the blame goes to anybody. I just look at it and say both these dudes were ready to rip each other's face off. That's good football. Patrick Queen was on a whole other level in this game. He was ready to kill somebody at all times. That's great to see. John Bates was just, wrong place, wrong time. You're a tight end that's going to hit somebody. He's your blocker. Awesome. Well, Patrick Queen's not going to back down. I got no issues. I got issues saying it's dirty. At that point, just say whatever. It is what it is. Who cares? But I don't think it was dirty. And I think you're getting a little bit of you're turning into you look a little soft calling it dirty, I would say.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of extracurricular, but to go as far as to say it's dirty, I think that it was maybe an arm drag tackle by Patrick Queen after the whistle. But don't we see that like 8 times a week? So
yes,
I don't know. I don't know if it was malicious. I think it was, if you want to call it dirty, sure. I think it's borderline, but it certainly wasn't malicious by Patrick Queen. I think it was just heat of the moment. You're taking the guy down because you're going a little bit extra.
Exactly.
We got one last thing before we get to Overreaction Tuesday, and I mentioned it. It's a little bit of drama. Obviously, everybody is aware of Mike Williams making that massive touchdown catch that ended up leading to the Pittsburgh Penguins victory. Well,
Pittsburgh Penguins, huh?
Pittsburgh Steelers. See, I do it too many times. You keep calling it out. It happens every week, at least once.
I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Okay, so Steelers, touchdown. Mike Williams, he took to Instagram to say, well, he's thankful to be in a Steelers uniform, but also threw in #redline. For those who know, a couple months ago, New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers threw Mike Williams under the bus, saying that he ran the wrong route at the end of a close matchup against the Buffalo Bills. Quote, "There's 2 verticals. Alan Lazard is down the seam. Mike Williams is down the, quote, red line. I'm looking at Alan. He puts his hands up and 3 guys go with him. So I'm throwing a no look to the red line. And when I peek my eyes back there, Mike Williams is running an in-breaker. He's got to be on the red line." So Mike Williams throwing it back at Aaron Rodgers a little bit after he ran the red line route to perfection against the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I love this. To be honest, I love this. I do not care. Mike Williams does not strike me as a problem guy. He's never seemed to have problems in the NFL. There have never been those big splashy Mike Williams is a drama queen headline floating around Los Angeles at any point throughout his career. I love it. You know, Aaron Rodgers loves to throw guys under the bus when he is not playing well. He is not playing well this season. Robert Saleh lost his job because of it. They got worse. Mike Williams got traded because of it. They got worse. You want to sit here and say, hey, pal, I'm still a good wide receiver, and maybe you're just a washed-up quarterback. And I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is. I'm just saying if that's the approach Mike Williams wants to take, I'm all for it. I love this one. I was fired up when it happened. I got no issues with Aaron Rodgers. Let's make that abundantly clear. You know, I think I hear more about who Aaron Rodgers is because of my job and because of the people I interact with on a daily basis. But I try to keep everything I hear to one side and everything that other people, because I've also spoken to a lot of people who know Aaron Rodgers personally, on one side. And I think it goes both ways. I think there are two sides to every coin. Never judge a book by its cover, so on and so forth. I got no issues with Aaron Rodgers. I got issues with quarterbacks calling out their players because Russell Wilson never would in a million years. Kenny Pickett never even would in a million years. You're going to call out a wide receiver, and then he's going to go catch a game-winning touchdown in his first game, first reception with the team that is the complete opposite of you guys, actually. Yeah, you are a 2-7. You might end up with the first pick in the draft football team, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are a 7-2. People are talking about being a Super Bowl contender football team. Feels like Mike Williams got the win here, and I'm glad that he's kind of showing it off a little bit. You know, sometimes you just gotta rub it in that you won, and I like it. I'm all about this one.
Yeah, no, I like it too. And here's the thing. He handled everything professionally when he was still in New York. Like, he didn't say anything about the trade. He didn't say anything about Aaron Rodgers. So throwing in a little hashtag after you get a game-winning touchdown, I think that's warranted, especially whenever you were called out in the way that you were. Again, small stuff, nothing that's going to amount to anything, but you like a little bit of attitude from your wide receivers, and that's what you saw a little bit of on Instagram on Sunday from Mike Williams.
Yeah, I agree. I love a little fire, you know, especially towards a situation that was rough, and now you're coming out here just happy to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that's I think that should bring a smile to everybody's face, and hopefully we get some questions at some point about what his workload will be this week, because I do imagine it takes a little bit of a step forward. All right, we're diving into Overreaction Tuesday. Don't worry, the video's coming. We're still working on it. And we also got, I mean, you have to add the degenerate thing into a Friday segment. You have to. You can't not add, you know, I'm a degenerate. Same, Mike. Same. We are all one. Me, you, the same. Appreciate you. I think I'm going to have an extra bourbon with them when the next time we have dinner or something, and just say, hey, Mike, I just want you to know this one feels like I'm closer to you now, just because I know, you know. We're diving into Overreaction Tuesday. I'm excited for him. Nick, I know you tossed it up. I know we got yours. I know we got some of the fans, some of the viewers. Maybe we'll get a couple of live ones too. I'll toss it to you, Nick. Overreaction Tuesday, week 11. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. Plenty going on here. I'm excited for it. What do we got?
Yeah, let's start off the way we started off the show. Without Alex Highsmith, Lamar Jackson will go off on the ground against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No chance. It is not an overreaction. It is not an overreaction. I will say that. It is not an overreaction. But statistics say, history tells you that is not going to be the case for Lamar Jackson and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has some success, more success than most, but not Lamar Jackson level success. They will rely heavily on Derrick Henry in this ball game. I bet you they'd try to throw Diontae Johnson a football, which we didn't talk about that. Totally slipped my mind when we were going through this podcast, but Mike Tomlin's words on Diontae Johnson were less than flattering. Than flattering. They were not the greatest. It seemed very much so as a brush by of, yeah, well, you know, Diontae Jackson is leading our team in interceptions, and Diontae Johnson is on the Baltimore Ravens, which we didn't trade him to, doing very little. I don't know if the Steelers will win this game. I will make that prediction on Friday. I do not know if Lamar Jackson is Gonna win his third MVP, if I had to guess, probably. What I do know is the Pittsburgh Steelers tend to shut this guy down. Is it an overreaction? No. Anything is possible on any Sunday with Lamar Jackson. Is it likely? Also no, because the Pittsburgh Steelers, they tend to have Lamar Jackson's number, and I got to imagine they're going to have it again this week at home with a rocking crowd and a couple of linebackers that'll be filling in for Alex Highsmith that I think are better than those who filled in for Alex Highsmith in the past.
Let's check over to the offensive side of the football, where I'm going to say George Pickens is a top 5 receiver in the NFL with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position.
Oh, I do also want to mention before because it popped in my head as you were saying this, Patrick Queen. Don't forget Patrick Queen will be in the middle, probably spying Lamar Jackson, and you got to think he is going to try to win that battle at any cost. Now, George Pickens, excuse me. Top 5. Justin Jefferson is number 1, remains number 1. This season, AJ Brown's got to be up there. He remains an absolute freak of nature. Amon St. Brown's got to be up there. He remains an absolute freak of nature. Who else is having like those crazy seasons? Is anybody else having those crazy off the wall, just can't stop them seasons? Jamar Chase should be up there.
Terry McLaurin is up there as well. He's 3rd right now in the NFL in receiving yards.
Terry McLaurin just played the Pittsburgh Steelers and George Pickens outplayed him. I mean, that and excuse me, George Pickens outplayed him. It wasn't like, Terry McLaurin had a good game. George Pickens had a better game. And in moments where the Steelers offense looked like the Steelers offense stunk, George Pickens did wild things to say, yeah, maybe right now we stink, but I'm going to get 30 yards on this play because that's just who I am. I mean, he literally would jump up and make a ridiculous catch, then jump up and stiff arm somebody and not go anywhere, and then jump up and do something crazy, like not really hurdle somebody, but just kind of gain 3 more yards on already a 25-yard catch after he just broke 2 tackles. I mean, George Pickens outplayed him. I would say yes. I got a hard time saying that's an overreaction. Maybe it's walking the line. Maybe there could be 5 guys that you can name before George Pickens. But I think there's an argument to be made for every single one of them with George. He's open all the time. He has a catch radius that is unbeatable. He adjusts his body better than literally anybody in the NFL. He is doing things and coming up with plays in crucial moments. I mean, how is that an overreaction? I don't think it is an overreaction. I think it's very hard to say that's an overreaction right now.
This might make you more confident. He's currently 9th in the NFL in receiving yards. And of course, he's only played 3 of those 9 games with Russell Wilson. So that's the caveat. Not is he just based on what you've seen, but with Russell Wilson, does it make him a top 5? I think it does. And the one other weird thing I do want to bring up is Darnell Mooney is 6th in the NFL in receiving yards, and I just think that's very interesting.
Shout out Kirk Cousins, bro. Shout out Kirk Cousins. No, I think he's there. I don't think that's an overreaction. And yet you say that, that also includes a Denver Broncos game where he finished with like 40 yards, would have had like 175 if penalties weren't called on the Pittsburgh Steelers, would have another touchdown this season if penalties weren't called, would have 2, potentially 3 more touchdowns this season if penalties weren't called on crazy plays by him. I mean, yeah. The top 5 is a very realistic number for him.
All right, I got one more for you. Van Jefferson will have less than 5 catches the rest of this season due to the arrival of Mike Williams.
Probably. I think you're going 3 for 3 here on not overreactions. Less than 5 catches. What's he at right now? How many is he? That's so many.
He has 14 catches. He has 23 targets through the first 9 games.
He gets targeted a lot, but you got to imagine that's going away. He's coming off the field. Mike Williams is going on the field. Van Jefferson's going to become the number 4. I don't think you could say. I mean, there were times where Cordero Patterson was lining up as a wide receiver yesterday. I would guess that happens more than Van Jefferson gets moved around in any capacity moving forward, I could see Van Jefferson becoming the Miles Boykin, Gunnar Olszewski, you're just out there to block, Allen Robinson, style. 14 is a lot of catches. It might be technically an overreaction that, to say, oh, he's going to get less than, what are we smoking here? He had 14. He had 14 through 11 weeks. There's 8 games left, and they just added a guy to replace him. I don't think that's an overreaction. I think it should be, but I don't think it is. I don't think that's an overreaction.
All right, let's jump over to the listener inquiries. Daniel says Broderick Jones was the best player from the Steelers offensive line this Sunday.
That is an overreaction. Woo! My friend, is an overreaction. I'll say he had a much better game than he has had in games past, but it was still not a good game. There was still like quite a few, and just because he didn't get called for a penalty, at least that I believe, doesn't mean that it was a good game. I still think Dan Moore was the best offensive lineman that they had on Sunday. Just Isaac Seumalo struggled. Zach Frazier struggled. Mason McCormick. I mean, the interior just got beat up. They definitely got beat up. I think it would be Dan Moore. I think it'd be a close call. I'll say this. That is borderline not an overreaction. I will say it is an overreaction because, first off, I don't think anybody on that offensive line played well or was good or should be considered the best. I think they all stunk is a better way to word it. But I would say Dan Moore was still the best. The performed the least sucky in week 10 against the Commanders.
Let's go over to AJ, who says James Pierre will end up being the starter with Diontae Jackson out. He will play better than Joey Porter Jr. for the rest of this season and will have a game-sealing interception in the Super Bowl. Also, any update on Cole Holcomb and is Najee staying in Pittsburgh? AJ brought the heat.
AJ, man, first off, that's an overreaction that makes me I appreciate all you guys. You guys are so awesome. That is, my friend, an overreaction. That is shout out to James Pierre's helmet, man. But James Pierre's head is not always going to be in the way. Sometimes he's going to have to put another body part out there to say, this is what's going to stop this pass. It's not going to be the back of my forehead. I would say that's an overreaction. I would say it's an look at James is a great guy. James is a super nice dude who works his butt off. He's an undrafted guy who came from a really tough part of Florida, and he made it. He made it out the gutter and got to the NFL. And I've seen him shed a tear talking about his come up and coming from the place that he has come from growing up. And that is so awesome to hear. He is a story you root for. I was bummed out when the Steelers cut him because I thought he's a valuable special teamer and he deserves a job somewhere. And he probably won't get a job somewhere else because they won't view him as a good special teamer. They'll want him to be a corner too. In Pittsburgh, you can be a good special teamer and that adds value. That being said, he is a good special teamer and a corner that ran into the ball with the back of his head against the Commanders to win a game. And that is commendable. But that might be the peak of James Pierre's season for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like it. Let's go to Deadpan Duke, who says the Steelers will not win a playoff game if Alex Highsmith doesn't return for the season. Now, obviously, we know he's not out for the season, but I think this opens up a larger conversation of if the Steelers do lose one of Highsmith or Watt, does that make them unable and incapable of winning a playoff game this season?
I think that is an overreaction right now just because we haven't seen Preston Smith yet. We just haven't. We don't know what Preston Smith is going to bring in a larger role. And until we do, that has to be an overreaction. Only on a technicality. We could find out Preston Smith ain't that guy. But Preston Smith has looked like that guy for a long time in the NFL. It's not like Preston Smith is coming in here. Oh, you got a guy who was the third stringer in Green Bay for a 7th round pick. Let's see what happens. Oh, you got a guy who started last season for the Green Bay Packers, but this season was on the couch and came over here like a Miles Jack. No, Preston Smith was starting 9 games on a winning football team for Green Bay and had 2 sacks and then added a 3rd one in his debut with the Steelers. So maybe Preston Smith is good, and maybe Preston Smith can keep that level of intensity near Alex Highsmith level. I don't know if it's going to get Alex Highsmith level, but near. So I would say this is an overreaction because we don't know what Preston Smith and Nick Herbig could bring. I will say that if TJ goes down, that's a different conversation, but only because the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've never shown they could win without TJ Watt.
Fair enough. We got a couple of overreactions in the comment section here. Let's start with Marlon Lewis, who says, Overreaction Tuesday, we're beating the Chiefs on Christmas by 2 scores.
Overreaction Tuesday, my friend. Overreaction Tuesday. That is an overreaction. There's no chance that the Pittsburgh, I mean, there is. Never say never. Never say never. But it is hard to believe the Kansas City Chiefs are going to play a game on Christmas, spend their holiday in Pittsburgh in the snow with eating Permani sandwiches with Taylor Swift in the booth, and they're going to lose by 2 touchdowns. That just doesn't seem likely. The Chiefs don't lose by 2 touchdowns. That's an overreaction. It's an overreaction, my friend.
They don't lose by 2 touchdowns. They also haven't lost. So there's that as well.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Right now, anything considering a loss is an overreaction.
Speaking of haven't lost, let's go to Josh's overreaction to close out this segment. It says, Overreaction Tuesday, we are going to win out the regular season and get the number 1 seed, which would be a 15-2 record, an undefeated AFC North schedule, and a win on Christmas against the Chiefs, not to mention a win over your cross-state rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles.
It seems to be the only thing that could come out of my mouth right now. Does Russell Wilson win MVP if the Pittsburgh Steelers win out?
Potentially, yeah. Because then at that point you have 2 wins over MVP candidate Lamar, and you have a big Christmas Day victory over Patrick Mahomes. If they go 15-2, I would think, I mean, maybe not Russell Wilson,
the Chiefs as the number 1.
It maybe not Russell Wilson. Is TJ Watt the MVP if they do that?
Potentially. I mean, it's a quarterback award. It's a quarterback award, but I agree. It would depend. Could the finalist be Russell Wilson and TJ Watt? Could they be 1-2?
I don't think people can blindly ignore the fact that most valuable players shouldn't have 2 players that are both finalists.
I mean, if this scenario happened, I think you could probably make an argument that everybody, George Pickens is in there, Najee Harris sneaks his way into there, maybe Cam Hayward is in there somewhere on the ballot.
Ben
Skoranek is on there. You throw Money Boz in there, just feels like there's got to be something going on. This is clearly an overreaction. We knew this was going to be an overreaction. This is a good one. I think if they do, overreaction to say Russell Wilson, like 2nd best quarterback in the NFL right now.
If they go to, he would be undefeated at what? 11-0 on the season, if that's the case. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes. So you're thinking Patrick Mahomes loses another one besides Christmas Day. That alone might be the overreaction. That's true. That alone. Either way. Overreaction. That's a good one. That's a wrap for Overreaction Tuesday then. Awesome. I appreciate you guys. These are a blast. And who had the absolutely fantastic comment before I? That was AJ. AJ, man, that was fantastic, brother. That was so awesome. I appreciate it so much. All right, guys, we are going to dive into all your questions, so make sure that you are tossing them in the chat. But first, we're going to take a quick break here. A word from our boys over at GameTime. Guys, there is no better place to be during football season than at a Pittsburgh Steelers game. And now, GameTime has this new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live, like the Pittsburgh Steelers,
even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I, as everybody knows, am going to see Creed in a couple of weeks, and it was effortless finding my tickets on GameTime. Why? Because they lay everything out for you. All-in pricing shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkouts. Seat views means that you get to see a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you ever buy the tickets. The lowest price guaranteed, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. And GameTime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use our code ALLSteelers for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ALLSTEELERS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Shout out our boys over at GameTime. All right, we're diving into all your questions as we do every single day. If you got them, toss them in the chat. We'll answer as many of them as we can before we head out of here. Nick, take it away. What do we got?
Yeah, it might not be 15 wins, but Logan wants to know, with the upcoming schedule, do you think the Steelers get over or under 12 wins by the end of this season?
Can you pull up the schedule? Let's go through the schedule. Let's see if we could I used to have a little pocket schedule sitting here. That came in handy a lot last season. I should get another one rather soon. But let's see what they come up with. They're 7-2 right now. I think both of us had them right around this mark at this point in the season. Didn't expect Washington to come down to a 1-point game, but you make these predictions early. Let's see if something has changed.
All right, we got the Steelers hosting the Ravens this Sunday at Acrisure Stadium.
That's a win. I'm going to chalk that up to a win. That's one.
All right, you got the Steelers then visiting the Browns on Thursday Night Football next week.
Look, anything could happen in the AFC North. That's a win. I mean, the Browns, I did my power ranks. I have to do power rankings every week for SI or for on SI, and I want to say the Browns were 31 on my power rankings. The Tennessee Titans were the only team below them. So that's 2 right there.
All right, you then have them visiting the Cincinnati Bengals on a Sunday afternoon game on December 1st.
Russell Wilson suffers his first loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so that's 2. There were still 2, 9 wins, 9-3.
Then back to a Browns matchup on December 8th at 1 o'clock.
You're sweeping the Browns. That's 10 and 3.
All right, then here comes that hellscape of a schedule to close it out, starting with a road game against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, you're probably, I don't want to say probably. That's a toss-up. That is as big of a toss-up of a game as they come. We'll leave that one void for now. We'll say that's a nah, and we'll come back to it at the end. We'll see if we could get there either way.
All right, after that, they have the Baltimore Ravens again on a Saturday night matchup at 4:30.
Yeah, that is a brutal schedule. I'm going to say they beat the Ravens. They sweep the Ravens this year. There's just something about it. Baltimore looks scary. We'll find this out Sunday, how scary they are against the Steelers. Baltimore's defense makes me too worried. They are just not a good defense almost at all. So I'm going to say that's a win right now. I'm going to say that's 4. You're now sitting at 11 wins.
All right, 4 days later, they host the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day.
They're going to lose to the Chiefs. All right, so 4. We're still 4. You're at 11-3 with 11-4 with a scratch here.
And then they have a home game to close out the season against the Cincinnati Bengals.
So this is what it comes down to is it will most likely come down to where is their playoff spot come week 18. Is it good? Is it secured? Are they fighting for the number 2 seed? Are they fighting for the number 3 seed? If nothing could change, they lose to the Bengals because Justin Fields and company are out there, and all the credit to Justin Fields. But when Justin Fields' pass options are going to be Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, and Ben Skoranek, it is, what are the expectations? Not very high. When James Pierre and CJ Henderson are starting a corner, you got to believe that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow about to have a hell of a day. So I would say it comes down to that game. Maybe you beat Philly, but I'm not confident in a win in Philly. So my answer to this is maybe. They're going to be right on the verge of it. They are going to be right on the verge of it.
You have them basically pushing. Over would be 13. I think that all would have to go very well for you to finish.
They're definitely pushing. Wins. I don't think that they get past. They could get past 12 wins, but again, if I had to guess, 12 is the number.
All right,
maybe 11.
Let's go over to Marlon Lewis, who says, "Are you leaning Preston Smith starting this Sunday due to his run-stopping ability over a Nick Herbig?"
I'm leaning Preston Smith because he has long-time starting NFL experience. That's why I'm leaning Preston Smith. And I think the Steelers are leaning Preston Smith that way for that reason as well. Herbig's been hurt since week 5. That's a long time to miss some football games. He's still a second-year guy. I get what he was supposed to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season, but they haven't gotten that yet, not, for the back half of their current schedule. Preston Smith seems like a guy that's been on starting teams, on starting defenses for 9+ years, and I would imagine he gets to start again in Pittsburgh this weekend, and probably until Alex Highsmith comes back from that ankle injury.
Let's skip down to Richard. Appreciate you as always. Says, yes, will the Steelers have more home games on the road than not? Seems like there are more Steelers fans in the stadium every week.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, actually. It's kind of nuts. I will say you are getting into AFC North territory here. So you're not going to outdo the Baltimore Ravens. That's not going to happen. You might outdo Cincinnati. Especially this year. I could see that happening. You're not going to outdo Cleveland. I mean, it's crazy. Cleveland could be the worst team in football. Pittsburgh comes to town. Those fans are nuts. Those fans are crazy. Like, you got to give credit where credit's due. Cleveland fans, they show out. They definitely show out. I'm not taking anything away from Pittsburgh fans. If it's in Pittsburgh, it's the other way around. You don't see the Cleveland fans, just like you don't see the Pittsburgh fans in Cleveland.
It's also a primetime game.
Yeah, and it's a Thursday game. They're going to get crazy. They're going to get rowdy. And Creed's in town the next day. You just never know the crowd you're going to get there. And then Philly, you're going to get a lot of fans in Philly, but Philly fans are still Philly fans. And all the Steelers fans might get mugged before they go in that stadium with, hey, I grew up, okay? I grew up on the Philly side of the Philly state, okay? It is not. Those are some different fans out there, man. Philly fans are a different breed of human being. They are the scariest fans. People will say Oakland or whatever, Detroit. Philadelphia fans will punch you in the face and then continue to eat a cheesesteak like nothing ever happened. And that's how they'll say hello. They're wild human beings. For the most part, it will be more fans though. Yes. And we appreciate you, Richard.
Let's go over to Cody Silva, who says, I heard after the game, Highsmith was off the crutches, but was getting helped. Is that true?
No, I only, from what I've heard, and I was not in Washington, but from everyone I've spoken to, Alex Highsmith was on crutches the whole time. At least when he was visible. Maybe he was off them and on a scooter at one point. But when he was, after he was dressed and showered, he was on crutches and working his way through the locker room.
Let's give a quick shout out to Aiden Alexander, who says, what's up, boys? Just got out of surgery and had to make sure I hopped on the live. Keep up the good work, guys. Love tuning in every day.
Hey, dude, this is awesome. We appreciate you. Hopefully, good Overreaction Tuesday. Keep that energy up. You got our thoughts and prayers there, brother. Hope you're doing well.
Let's go over to Josh, who says, at this point, how does TJ Watt not get Defensive Player of the Year? He's held at least 5 times a game, probably more. And when do the refs throw at least one flag for it?
If the refs threw flags for TJ Watt, the score would be different in the Washington game because the Steelers would have got a safety because Trent Scott literally just grabbed his shoulder pads and spun with them in the end zone to not let him get to Jaden Daniels. And the ref just stared at both of them. He'll never get a flag. Refs don't throw flags for TJ Watt. Refs are atrocious anymore in the NFL. They're so bad, and they're worse when it comes to good defensive players. Defensive Player of the Year, I mean, he's got to be the favorite. But that being said, you gotta you can't have games like Washington, and it seems like teams are trying desperately to take TJ Watt away. Are you going to be able to figure out a way in this back half to step up and find ways for TJ to continue to make these game-changing plays? That'll be the difference between winning and not winning Defensive Player of the Year.
Steelers Nation goes off of this question, says, instead of TJ only rushing from the outside, why can't he loop to the inside at times as well?
Yeah, that's the plan. Now, last week, then in weeks past, they haven't been set up for it because you need 3 outside linebackers to make that happen. TJ just kind of moves as a third inside linebacker or outside linebacker, excuse me, working on the inside to rush a gap. That's all he is. You're not taking anybody extra off the field. You put Alex Highsmith on one side, you'd put Nick Herbig on the other, you'd put TJ somewhere in the middle, creeping around the line to kind of stand up and rush from there. That's why you haven't seen a lot of it. They do love to use that when there are 3 outside linebackers healthy that they can rely on. They just haven't had it since week 5. Maybe with Nick Herbig and Preston Smith back, that'll change this week, and TJ will get to move around a little bit.
Speaking of that, Lindsay says, do you think that they're waiting to do that more so teams aren't expecting it late in the season?
Yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. I think they're waiting more so to get some healthy guys back than it is waiting to kind of disguise it for other teams. Probably a little bit of both, but they need they're not going to do it with Jeremiah Moon on the outside. You're not going to be like, Jeremiah, get out there. You're a better option than TJ. Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith, hopefully Preston Smith will be able to take that on so that they could hold the outside. TJ can move to the inside.
Marlon wants to know, do you think Russ gets franchise tagged next year by the Pittsburgh Steelers?
No, I don't. I mean, people have said 30 million. The franchise tag will be nuts next year. It'd have to be close, if not over 40 million bucks. I think Russ signs for less than the 30. I think he's looking at, 20 million bucks a year next year and just says, screw it, man. Like, let's go win another Super Bowl. I want to be here. This is where I want to be. I think his legacy means more to him at this point than money. And because of that, he'll take a good deal with Pittsburgh. No. So no, the answer is to no, just because it'll be too expensive.
Let's go over to Matt, who simply wants to know, what were your thoughts on how Cam Sutton performed in his season debut last week against the Commanders?
I thought he played well. The Commanders were fast for him. You saw him definitely trailing some wide receivers from time to time, but that's not his game. It's not Joey Porter's game. And the Commanders, they have the speed effect for most teams. They're going to be faster and they're going to outrun most teams. But I thought Cam Sutton played really well. He came up with a really big play in the second half, I believe, maybe right at the end of the first half on the sideline there. And I thought overall he was versatile and able to play multiple positions and play them pretty well. And you saw at times like, hey, okay, they're throwing the ball a lot. We're taking Beanie off the field. Cam's going to go in there, and you saw that work. So I thought Cam played well and was a good addition to the defense.
All righty, let's move over to AJ, who says, serious question this time. Do you think Diontae Jackson sits out one game so then he's able to finish a full game for the first time in a while?
Yeah, you're telling me the last question wasn't serious? The last overreaction question wasn't serious? No.
That's what I'm wondering here, AJ.
Yeah, this is a different injury. So it's been the shoulder all season long. Now it's the hamstring. You'd have to guess that it goes by severity. The shoulder is not going to heal. That's going to be the problem with the shoulder. Is he's been pretty open that this happened in week 3. It continues to linger. It's going to continue to linger. It's not going to get any better until he takes some time off, but probably more than 1 week. The Steelers they don't have the time to waste right now. And because of that, he's got to be out there. So I don't think he'll take a game off to try and shore himself up for the rest of the season, especially because this is a hamstring and not a shoulder. But I do expect that he'll just continuously get a little bit more healthy everywhere else except for the shoulder, and hopefully the shoulder heals slowly but surely as well.
Let's jump over to Corey Perry, who says, with a struggling Ravens secondary, could you see George Pickens and Mike Williams combining for 215-plus yards with no Kyle Hamilton?
Yeah, I can. I mean, Jamar Chase just went off for 250? 265, some crazy number like that against the Ravens. The Ravens defense is bad. They got Marlon Humphrey, who's good. I mean, Marlon Humphrey is Marlon Humphrey. Kyle Hamilton might not go. He wasn't on the extra practice report that came out today. That defense is just atrocious, man. Like there's nothing about that defense that gives you any oomph. Roquan Smith, but what could one guy really do? What could one corner who doesn't really play the outside really do? Like, I just think that they're so limited, and I think Russ is going to take advantage of them big time. So yeah, I think the answer to this is you could see it, certainly.
Let's go over to WVU fan who says, I'm a little concerned about the Steelers secondary being outscored by the Bills. Do you think they're good enough as is to make the Super Bowl and even win it?
The secondary? Yeah, I think so. I think when healthy, the secondary is good. I mean, the Bills are a good team, but the Bills are dealing with injuries of their own. Keon Coleman continues to miss. Amari Cooper has been out for a couple of weeks. You don't know what the Bills are going to look like come that week. And Kansas City is Kansas City. That's going to be the big giant test there is, can you beat Kansas City? I don't know if they could beat Kansas City. What I will say is I trust the Steelers secondary. I think the Steelers secondary only got better with Cam Sutton. They have a reliable set of corners. They have a young guy in Beanie Bishop. They're going to get Corey Trice back at some point, hopefully this week. You have Minka. You have Deshaun Elliott. You have DeMonte KZ. It just feels like all the pieces are there. So, yeah, I do trust the secondary to win big games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that they didn't have the best game against Washington, but at the same time, I don't think anybody in that defense has had a great game the last couple of weeks. And to be very honest, I think that starts with TJ Watt. TJ Watt has crazy games. The Steelers defense tends to play very, very well. So you start to get your X factor involved more, you'll probably see an uptick.
Let's jump down to Jay Vine. Appreciate you as always. Says, what do you think we end up doing with Justin Fields?
This season, I expect at some point you use him in some sort of package. Next season, I expect he starts for the New York Jets or the New York Giants or the Tennessee Titans or the Las Vegas Raiders, or who else is going to need a quarterback? The Seattle Seahawks. That would be a crazy story, huh? A team like that. He'll have a starting job somewhere. Somebody's going to pay him a decent bit of money. I don't think it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go over to Chris P, who says, do you guys believe the passing game ends up being the focal point against the Ravens pass defense? Because the pass defense is garbage and the run defense is pretty good.
I expect it to be a lot like the game we just saw, where Najee Harris gets his opportunities and the running game gets their opportunities, and you try to build it from there. And then if that's not working, you turn to Russ and say, okay, start throwing the football a little bit and see what happens. I don't expect the Steelers to turn away from the running game and go all passing. I look at this as they will play their style of game. They will try to win their way. If it's successful, great. If they have to make adjustments, they will. But I agree with you. I think that they will have more success through the air than they will on the ground.
Let's go to Loswald, who says, why is Eric Rowe not on our active roster? He played so good at the end of last year. James Pierre as a 53rd man he likes, but seems like a no-brainer that Eric Rowe should also be on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, so they worked out Eric Rowe today. They haven't signed. I don't think they've signed him as of yet, unless something happened while we were on the podcast. I don't know what they're thinking with Eric Rowe. I thought Eric Rowe played really, really well last season. I was surprised that the Steelers didn't bring him back to their practice squad. Like, why not? Why not just add him to your practice squad? I don't think he gets a 53-man spot over James Pierre because he's a safety, not a corner. He's not as good of a special teamer as James Pierre, and that holds a ton of value. But I do think that you put him on your practice squad. Like, why wouldn't you put him on your practice squad? That doesn't make any sense to me, to just let him sit on the couch and say, if something were to happen, why wouldn't we have this guy, especially after you got rid of Terrell Edmonds? So I agree with you. I think that he deserves a spot in Pittsburgh. I would start him on the practice squad before I did anything else, and probably just keep him there unless you had to move him.
Let's go over to Roman, who says, what kind of role does Mike Williams have in this offense? And do you think his snap count / percentage increases more and more throughout the year?
Yeah, his snap count will, and his role will improve throughout the season. I expect a pretty significant jump this week to last week. That's just what the Steelers do. You got to get on a moving train. You're going to start slow and you're going to ramp your way up. But I look at this and say Mike Williams had 9 plays and 1 catch, 32 yards and a touchdown. And Mike Tomlin went, all right, next week, that'll be more. That'll be a little bit more. I don't look at it as a ton, 30 snaps maybe for Mike Williams. It'll be a significant jump, but it won't be, you're not playing half the game or anything like that. But I expect it to increase, I'd say, in 2 weeks when they're playing, 3 weeks because it's a short week. By the time they're playing Cincinnati, he will be wide receiver 2, no questions asked, playing most of the offensive snaps with George Pickens.
Let's finish it off with Sejan, who says, what's the biggest key to victory for the Steelers this weekend, in your opinion?
Oh, jumping early to some game coverage here, some game preview. I would go off the rip here. Okay. This isn't well thought out. I didn't have a car ride home from the facility, sitting in traffic, yelling at some old people, as one does in the city of Pittsburgh while you're driving, to come up with this. So I'm gonna keep it simple, but I'll try to get detailed. Or I'll try to kind of add a spin to it. It could come down to Patrick Queen. I think one of the biggest keys to victory will be Patrick Queen. Can you stop Lamar Jackson? Can you be an animal? You will be going 110 miles an hour in this game. Patrick Queen will be a different type of human being compared to everybody else when he plays the Ravens, because he will be looking to say, I was the good one. You made a mistake by not trying to keep both of us. You're not trying to put down Roquan Smith, but that defense definitely took a step backwards from a year ago. And, well, Patrick Queen was a second-team All-Pro a year ago, and you got to think that's a pretty big drop-off. So I think one of the keys to victory will be, how well does Patrick Queen play? Does he give the Pittsburgh Steelers another X factor to say, look at, I'm going 1 billion miles an hour. I'm playing harder than anybody else in Pittsburgh, or anybody else, it will be in Pittsburgh. So anybody else on this field, is it useful, or is it just me going 100 miles an hour making mistakes? That will be one of the keys to victory, one of the biggest keys of victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to one last one, because we got to give our former Point Park alumni some shine here. RJ says, hey, fellas, been listening all season. First time question. What is the best case and most realistic scenario for the playoffs? Also, what year did you graduate from Point Park? I'm a 2017 alumni.
That is awesome. What year did we graduate from Point Park?
I mean, I graduated in 2019 and you walked across the stage, so I would assume that you were there too. Yeah.
I don't remember. When people ask me, I really don't. I've at some point in time.
It was pre-COVID, so everything's jumbled.
That's what I'm saying. Like I've lived several lives since that day. So shout out to RJ, my man. Shout out to RJ. In this case, what's the most realistic case for the playoffs? I think right now the most realistic case for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to win the AFC North, host home field at least for 1 game, potentially make it 2 if you could surpass the Buffalo Bills, which you'll get an opportunity to do so in the second half. I mean, the Bills and the Steelers have the same record, and the Steelers are going to play almost exclusively AFC teams from here, literally all but one AFC team from here until the playoffs. You win them, you continue to grow that conference record, which gives you the tiebreaker. I would say the most realistic scenario where we sit is they win the AFC North. They take on somebody. They hope that it's the Denver Broncos. They hope that it's I don't even know who else would be in there right now, the Chargers, and that they can win a game. And I think that is very realistic. From there, I mean, everything's on the table. You go and play Kansas City, who knows? You go and play Buffalo, who knows? You play Baltimore, who knows? It's that first game could be one you could predict a win for. That second game, no matter where you are, what the record is, I think is a toss-up.
Yeah, as of right now, the Steelers sit in the 3rd seed in the AFC. If the season ended today, it would be a rematch. Steelers versus the LA Chargers.
I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. Jim Harbaugh scares me, and the Chargers are getting better, but so are the Steelers. So I would be okay with that.
That's a wrap for today, then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work on si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.